Coming in, you know it. Hey everyone, how you doing? How's life? How's the session so far? Loved the session. So thank you so much for joining me today. I'm gonna double click on what Noah just did and really share some of my experiences to what are some of the devastating mistakes I see executives and team leaders sometimes do when they plan for the year ahead. Specifically, some of the issues that I'm seeing is that either the plan is like way too broad or poorly defined. And we're going to do X, we're going to increase this. And there's not enough meat in it to have the ELT, the executive leadership team, or the board, or even the team really understand what do you mean by it. Like, how are you actually going to do it? There's just like very broad goals or very sporadic projects. And then sometimes we're thinking about, okay, these are the things that I want to do because I see some challenges with my team or things that I think would be really good to just elevate our level up. And they don't always mesh up with the go to market strategy. How do I know this? Is because sometimes when I work with heads of customer success, they don't even know what the go to market is. And so when they talk about their plan, there's a bit of it like can't really attach it back to what matters the most to the board and the ELT team. So that's sometimes a miss. And sometimes, when we actually present our plan to the CEO or other executives, it almost feels like it's over ambitious targets. I remember one time I actually worked with a department head, and we asked him to come up with a plan that would help us to scale our approach to training and educating clients. And he came up with this proposal of how we're going to give him like 10 additional employees just for his team so that he can do it by the book, in alignment with best in class, not necessarily the business needs, not necessarily what's meeting reality, but just really was like over ambitious goals and targets. And it wasn't something that the company was comfortable in implementing anytime soon. And so I see a lot of issues. When we work on a strategic plan, what we want to do is we want to align and gain buy-in so that the structure of the plan is as such that it's easy for them or for you to talk about your enrollment conversation and why they should give you the budget and support you with that plan. We want a plan that actually has a proper estimate on how you're going to allocate resources, what is the budget that you need, and it's not overly ambitious, if you will, but actually something that's grounded in reality. And that would entail balancing between, we want to be best in class, but the team is the team and that this is the resources we have. And especially in 2024, we know that there's going to be some constraints around how many resources we're going to get and what kind of budget we're going to get approved for both people, processes, and tools. So, with that, what can we do to actually structure a plan that is going to deliver these results? We're going to present it. It's going to be super clear. It would seem real, like something that's feasible. It's not going to intimidate anybody, and it's actually going to get approved. And by the end of the year, you will be able to follow through with it and show that you were able to accomplish it. And so I don't think it's very easy to come up with a plan like that. So I want to share with you my definitive plan method. And so you can too structure the way that you are designing your strategic plan. And down the road later today, you're going to get a lot of ideas on what kind of things you should be potentially putting in your plan in 2024. And as you're collecting all these ideas, I want you to ground them in a way that it gets approved. And so this is what this method is about. And with that, what I'm going to share is my whiteboard, which you all hopefully are going to love this structure. Okay, so Maybe I'll just share my entire, here we go. Good. So, what is this definitive plan? Essentially, we want to include three main components to our strategic plan when we design it. Let's say we have a list of ideas, we answered all of Noah's questions, we have some good understanding of what we want to do. And by the way, this is probably like the number one thing that most executives include is, what's their target? And the target might be comprising of things like, okay, uh, what are my OKRs? Have anybody heard of OKRs, objectives and key results? What are the outcomes that I want to achieve? What are the processes that I'm going to implement? What are the projects that I'm going to have this year? So I might have a list of things, and sometimes, most of the executives, especially in their early years, this is all that's being included. What I want you to do is actually make sure you include some more. So, for example, the second thing that I want you to do is I want you to ground it in reality. What does this mean? This means that you might include, what is the baseline? Where's your starting point? Number one thing is like to include, things like, what's the state of our technology? Maybe do a technology assessment. What are the challenges that we're seeing right now? What are our gaps? So we want to kind of make a list of all of those things and make sure that people who read this actually understand why we came up with these targets. So it's a little bit more grounded. The third thing that I think is a mistake sometimes that's not being included is all sorts of impediments. What do I mean by that? Well, it's anything that's related to barriers to success. It could be any kind of risks for your plan. It could be any kind of potential bottlenecks that might happen during 2024 that would prevent you from getting to these targets. So this is going to be your positive outlook and what you're going to do with it. This is going to be, the reality, current state. And then this is hopefully going to be, things that could go wrong. If, what happens like if you only do one of the two or two of the three, I think you were still going to potentially get into some trouble, in my humble opinion. First of all, if you're just focused on here's the reality that we have right now, here's a team, here's what we're going to do, and here's our ambitious goals, and you're not double clicking on what could be the barrier to success, you might not actually think things through completely, and your budget ask and the resources ask might not be accurate or complete. And so, in here, what would happen is by the end of the year, you will have a lot of wasted efforts. You might not be successful in actually completing your tasks. And so the next year that you're coming back to ask for something, you might have some trust issues going on because right now this might cause some anxiety for some people. Hey, how are you going to get that? Your ELT might be a little bit anxious about the plans if you don't really double click on potential barriers for success. It might not feel like it's completely grounded in reality. Some of you are really good at creating a vision plan and they're very good at creating the barriers, but they're not grounding it in reality, meaning they're not comparing it to what is the current situation. And what that does is when you present it to the ELT, it creates a sense of disconnect. Um, they don't really see how it's aligned with reality. They don't really understand what are the current capabilities and why are these targets being prioritized. They might think that you might be putting the emphasis on something that's not important. So when you ground it in reality, it's a lot easier to make your case. And lastly, impediment, like I said, barriers to success. We just basically want to be really clear about what we need to be able to do in order to get there. And so when you don't do that, sometimes we just get stagnant. Like I said, like if you're not able to actually, if you just have reality and barriers to success and you're not very clear about your target, you just get stagnant, right? Like, because we don't have you just like coming in and it feels almost like you're complaining. And so your ELT or executive teams might just feel overwhelmed, or they might feel like you don't have enough leadership skills to create a clear target of what are you going to do to handle these two things. Okay, so three different components. Question is, what can you do to get better at outlining the reality, outlining the target, and really be clear about barriers to success? So, when you talk about targets, obviously what we want to do is create some sort of a vision that would include clear timeline. My recommendation is either do a very clear timeline of what you're going to accomplish in Q1 of 2024, Q2, maybe the second half of 2024. And if you're really like have a clear vision for the future and you know that everything that you want to do is going to take a few more years, feel free to add in 2025, 2026 at a very high level. So the further out you go in the future, the more the bigger the period that you're describing gets, and probably like a little bit more it's about goals and actual things you're going to complete, because it's really hard to say what's how long everything is going to happen. Secondly, if you're not familiar with OKR frameworks, please get a book and read about it. This is a very strong framework that would help you articulate not just what your vision is, but what you're hoping to accomplish and what each thing in your vision is going to be impacting the actual reality today. And then lastly, I recommend do some like a realistic timeline. We talked about that, but maybe also like an ROI. Double click on the impact. Like if they actually give you the full budget, what would the ROI be? And if they give you partial budget, what would the ROI be? Okay, then how should we do the reality check? Okay, how can we get better at that? I think that sometimes what people do is they don't spend enough time asking. And who should we be asking about the reality right now? What are the challenges? What are the things that are working? What are the opportunities that we should be focusing on? What should we prioritize? You should really be considerate of a few people in your organization, the board and your executive leadership team. You should be considerate of your clients. Maybe do some client interview. Don't just ask yourself, ask your clients as well. If you don't have a client advisory board, help set it up or just do some interviews. And then, of course, you want to ask your own team and then your cross-functional team. After you're done doing some interviews, and by the way, I have a video on YouTube where I interview Christina Augustin, and I'm going to share the link to it with some questions and like how she ran this process. So you're welcome to watch it if you want to learn how to do this really, really well. Next, I want you to really assess the impact and run it by those people to see if that's realistic before you present your plan. And one of the ways to ground it is to look at industry benchmarks. If you don't have statistics of how other CSMs or how other CS teams are doing things, I'd like to encourage you to check our website, csmpractice.com. We have a CS resource library. We had a lot of infographics with market research that we perform over the years. We do like one per year, and we publish those stats on our website. So that could help you really ground why you're saying you're going to be able to achieve what you plan to do. Okay, the last thing is just risks and barriers, right? We want to really be clear about what do you really need to be able to get to accomplish this vision and ground it in reality again. So, three things that you can do to get really good at it is one, really estimate the barriers as they pertain to people. I think this is something that, okay, we say what resources we need, but we don't really consider a lot change management. So, what could be potential barriers from or pushback from your team, from your cross-functional team, from your executive team potentially, and of course from your clients? Secondly, we don't really think about barriers in terms of tools. And some of you might actually say, well, Irit, in 2024, we definitely think about that. Like, okay, what are the new techies that we have? Obviously, our competitors are going to double down on an eye, and does this fit in our overall strategy? do we have the wrong tools, or are we using it in like a less than optimized way? And then, of course, do we not have enough tools? Can we assess the overall CS strategy in terms of the technology stack to say, do we have some gaps? And again, my CS resource library, you can download the full tech stack and actually mark every category in red, yellow, green to say, where are we not investing enough in technology so we can be more scalable, lower cost to serve? And then finally, processes. We want to get clear on what processes do we need, what processes do we need to improve, do we need to add, etc. So this is the holistic strategy, and what I call the definitive plan method, that if you follow, I guarantee you're going to have a much better conversation with your strategic team around what's going to happen in 2024. And with that, I wanted to ask you what resonated the most for you. If you can type in the chat, I'd be really grateful. And then just to wrap this up, I wanted to say, thank you for listening to me. And like I said, if you, what was more valuable for you so far and why, in the chat, I'd love to read that. This is the video in my YouTube channel, Rebuilding CS Orgs. I'll type in the chat later the link. And if you need help planning for a 2024 customer success roadmap, I help customer success executives on a regular basis to do these type of things. So reach out to me. I eat these issues for breakfast. And with that, stick around. Lots of good insights next. And our next speaker is Ben Brownlee. Hope I didn't Brownlee, probably. Gong CCO, who's going to talk about AI and how to leverage that with the customer journey. Please help me welcome Ben.